to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and how are you guys feeling? Are you guys recovered from the worst loss in Philadelphia Union history? A 6-0 defeat to Pachuca in the Concacaf Champions Cup. And honestly, I don't think any of you guys are still recovered. So by the time you guys are listening to this, it's been 2 days now since the game's passed, and Twitter was insane. And I know we say it all the time. Social media, it isn't, a good basis to go off of to see how this fan base feels. But I would imagine after how that game was, that a lot of people feel like Twitter felt last night. And not good. Where's the clip? I should play it. Not good. Jim Curtin looked defeated in his press conference. Hopped on last night, or right after the game. I'm saying last night because we're recording this podcast on Wednesday night, and by the time you guys are listening to this, it's Thursday morning. But hopped on with Jose Nunez, Mike Barrera, Mark, and Jillian and Kyle Almoney, who are here with me tonight. We hopped on the AAT Sports podcast and got live reactions, and there was a whole bunch of people on the podcast just giving their thoughts and explaining how they felt. And yeah, still, after like a day after that game, I'm still pretty pissed off. I'm not going to lie. I'm still upset. I cannot believe we watched the Union get blown out 6-0 down in Mexico. And I'm going to try my best not to say anything that's going to get me in trouble, but I feel like I'm definitely going to say something. And we're going to try not to. And maybe some of you guys are like, oh, just let it out. But maybe Kyle and Jillian will. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing okay, all things considered.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, Todd. Last night, I said a few words that began with the letter D, couple with F.
Oh, lots of F ones.
Lots of Fs, couple S's. But no, it's good to be on. Thanks for having us. But I think like most Union fans right now, and I know I can be a little, on the positive side of things sometimes, but there's no positive with what we saw last night.
I think it was taking the people that were most Posidelphia to their breaking point. Because I can be very Posidelphia as well, and even I was just like feeling so defeated and discouraged after that. Like, you know what it was like? It was like how I felt when the Eagles collapsed. It was like when we got our butts handed to us by like the 49ers and all that began. I hope we do better than the Eagles did after they had that happen to them. Hope we pick ourselves back up and come out and make a statement against Austin or something. But that's gonna be the key here. But yeah, it was just horrible watching that. There was no fight in them. It was just depressing, to be honest.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there. There was no fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, no fight.
We've seen them go down and concede early, but then they've come back. They've shown some grit. They've fought back and even things out at times, and there wasn't that last night.
No.
They just gave up.
I mean, for reference point, I'm trying to think, when's the last time I've seen a Union team? And Todd, maybe you can chime in on this too. When's the last time we've seen a Union team they go down 3 goals and they give up, and we're sitting there, guys, at least try to score a goal. They're not even doing that. They're passing the ball to other people, getting them on the counterattack, and there we go, another goal. And it was like, what is this? I mean, I think the last time I saw a game, and I'm trying to even remember, like when I was driving today, when was the last time I saw it? Might have been 2022 Chicago away. I don't know if you remember that game, Todd. That game was bad, but I don't even think it was that bad as last night. I think last night was 10 times worse.
Yeah, I would say Charlotte in 2022 when the Union lost 4-0. I mean,
that was a bad one.
There's no reason why they should have went. I know, like, there was a hurricane. It was really windy, rainy, and everything. If I remember correctly, I know Daniel Rios scored a hat trick in that game, and there's just no reason why the Union should have lost to a bad Charlotte team, 4-0 in Charlotte. And I saw Mike Thomas bring up this point on Twitter. He said, you could say that was the game that lost the Union home field advantage to get MLS Cup at Subaru Park. All they needed was a point, and they get blown out 4-0 by Charlotte in 2022. It's inexcusable. And you brought up a funny point, Jillian, where you said, this reminds me of the Eagles and the 49ers. I said something similar to my boss today at work. He says he's a 5-for-5 fan, but I think deep down he's a 4-for-4 fan. But we're working on him. And I said, now I know how you feel being an Eagle fan, watching the Eagles lose to teams that they shouldn't lose to. And I'm not saying that the Union shouldn't have lost to Pachuca. I think Pachuca probably were the favorites in this game. But, we've seen the Eagles give up in the past, get blown out in the past. And that reminded me of the Union. And we can get into that here a little bit later because I definitely want to get into that. But I don't know. I think people are just deflated. I saw people on social media saying, "Oh, I want to give up my season tickets. I want to just stop going to games." And somebody brought up actually a pretty good point on social media. They said, my season tickets have no value. And I thought about that, and it's kind of true. I mean, if you look early on in the season trying to sell your season tickets, you're selling them less than what they're worth at face value, which is a little bit depressing. So, I mean, there's no money to be made on season tickets, but yeah, people aren't happy, and I don't think people are going to be happy for a while. And you brought up another point, Jillian, that you hope to see a fight from the Union against Austin over the weekend on Saturday. But what's that fight look like? And full transparency, Jose Nunez was supposed to be with us tonight, but his son got sick. So best wishes to Rafael and Jose and his family. Nothing too serious, just a stomach bug, it seems like. But Jose brought up a point and said, if you're Jim Curtin, send a message to this team. And that message would be, play all your backups, play all your Union 2 players. Like, it's inexcusable for those players that have been around for years to put up that performance down in Mexico. And I don't want to hear, oh, the altitude, oh, this, that. Oh, the Union had essentially a week off, not playing on Saturday against Seattle. Help the Union out. And guess what? The Union get blown out. And there's no excuses. You want to send a message, put in Nagbo, put in Macanya, put in Pirano. Sit players. Like, that sends a message. And yeah, maybe the Union send out the same lineup against Austin, and maybe they come out and light Austin up. But I think, you want to see your manager really make a statement, bench all those players. Bench all those players this weekend. And that's going to send a message to this team that it's unexcusable. It is unexcusable to give up 6 goals. We see this all the time in Europe. If a team concedes that many goals, a manager is getting sacked. And I'm not saying Jim Curtin needs to get fired. I'm not saying he needs to get sacked. But there needs to be serious questions asked. And not of Jim. And again, I said I don't want to get myself in trouble. And a lot of fans on social media. And we saw 97.5 actually call out Jay Sugarman too. And I think that's pretty huge. They don't give the Union a ton of coverage, even though they're their radio partners. But, you brought up the point, Jillian, that, well, of course, they read an article about a negative performance. But I actually think that's good. Put pressure on Jay Sugarman. They're the radio partners for the Union. They're giving the Union money. Or the Union is giving them money. Like, they have a partnership. That's huge, in my opinion, for the Union to be on 97.5. And for them to call out the Union for not spending money, that's pretty big, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, as all this is happening, we see, different sport, different situation, but the Eagles going and making all these big moves. They go and get Saquon Barkley. They're getting all these players and making their team look like a contender here and everything, and Howie Roseman's doing his thing and being the magician he is with that, so people in Philly, they see that and it's like, okay, well, why can't the union actually, spend some money and work some magic here, because it's just really frustrating.
You got more?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Where to start?
Yeah.
I have lots of feelings about this because I've been on the train that the union build from the academy, and that's their mantra, and that good and bad, that is what it is, and I still believe in that. However, you have to start wondering when you have a guy like Ty Baribo, who apparently is not ready, still on the bench. When you have, some of these guys you have invested money in not playing, and then the ones that are playing that you spend money on aren't performing. I mean, it's kind of telling when we, like Jim said in 2022, there was a $8 million guy came off the bench, and we went to Chris Donovan, and we joke about that, but lo and behold, it's the reality of the situation. I don't think that we need to go out and spend on, $10 million players.
Mm-hmm.
But we really need to. I'll give an example. The U22. McConaughey was our first one. Why are we not using the U22? I mean, right there's a pathway to get players in of quality if we spend it right.
Yeah.
But we're not even using that. And so I think the questions on Jay Sugarman are well deserved, and on that ownership. I mean, you guys are realizing and starting to see the league has caught up. They understand now that their teams are starting to spend. Heck, Colorado's spending.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Stan Kroenke is going to start spending, that needs to be a big wake-up call.
Montreal started spending too.
I know. Well, that's the other thing. Montreal spending. I mean, teams that were worse than the Union are spending. And it's not even about spending. I think it was Jose had posted that transfer market about the Union's value versus Pachuca's value. And yeah, sure, Pachuca had the more expensive player, but they're spending less money on more quality players, more proven players, you could say. When I was looking at it today, I was like, man, that guy's only worth that much on transfer market. That guy, maybe he's been around, or maybe he's an up and coming guy, but then you got to start wondering about the academy. I know I'm rambling here, but there's a lot of questions here that we just got to see how it plays out. But man, if things don't improve and we don't spend, Todd, what I'm more worried about is we kind of have the attention of the city. And Kevin Kincaid brought this up when he was on our show.
Yeah.
The union has the attention of the city, and we're not taking advantage of it. And we're not spending money when we can continue to grow this fan base. So I know I'm rambling here, but I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with the ownership not spending resources wisely, not using resources available to them, and honestly, kind of not being proactive. It seems that we're kind of reactive at times in the last year or two. So
Yeah, I think it needs to be a good balance of the academy building from that, but also you need to bring in some players as well that are established that can bring that little bit of star power. I'm not saying you need like someone Messi caliber, obviously, but you need to have a good balance, I think.
you do.
Yeah. And here we are, after we lost the MLS Cup, we had a lot of eyes on us. And, so many people, I was hearing people actually talk about the union way more, and people ask me about it. And people that had been like 4 for 4 and everything, like, you got to strike while the iron's hot there. Okay. But now that we're getting more attention, now we're looking like a freaking joke. Like, At least we did last night, you know?
We did. I mean, you got players like Glesnes, who 2 years ago was MLS Player
Yeah.
of the Year. Well, I don't know what he was doing last night. Elliott, who you can make the argument was I don't even know who he is anymore. He does not look like Jack Elliott. I mean, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, the team's regressed.
It has, and I mean, we ran it back again, basically. And the other thing is, I think because we've had the same group of players too, we're getting more figured out though too.
That's a big part of it, and we haven't made adjustments. But Todd, anyway, we've rambled too much. I want to hear what you have to say.
No, keep going. This is good. So you brought up a lot of good points, both of you guys, and the one thing that I want to talk about is right away is you talked about the transfer market value between these two clubs, and the Union are ranked higher. But if you look, Pachuca have spent more money than the Union. Their highest transfer fee was $10.6 million for Victor Davila back in the 18-19 season. And the Union's record's what? A little under 3 for Mikal Uwer, 2.7. Does that sound about right? Something like that.
Yeah, it's between 2.7, 2.1, I thought, but maybe I'm off on that.
Back in 2013, 2014, they spent $7.6 million on a center forward. Just a couple seasons ago, to get Chico Arango from LAFC, they spent $5.5 million. And we know that they transferred him to RSL. But the fact of the matter is, they are spending more money. They have spent more money than the Union have in the past. And I know their roster right now is a lot of free transfers, a lot of academy players. Sound familiar? And to say, man, I'm just not trying to get myself in trouble. I'm really not. To say that, you know, Pachuca shouldn't have outperformed the Union because their transfer market value is lower than the Union's. It's bullcrap. Those players wanted it more. That's what it came down to, in my opinion, at least. You look. I mean, there's just so much to talk about. 4 goals they conceded in the second half. I mean, that's uncharacteristic. I mean, Jim Curtin talked about. He said, "No, this didn't look like the Union" after his post-game press conference, and I don't think there was anything earth-shattering that Jim said after the game. And I honestly did want to play a couple clips, but I couldn't really get rid of the humming sound. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Jillian posted a clip on Tuesday night of her cat in the background, and then this just really, really annoying sound. And it went on throughout the whole broadcast or press conference. And I was like, I got rid of this, but then it just made Jim Curtin's voice sound like an alien. I'm like, nah, I don't want to play any of these clips. I don't want Jim to sound like that. But Jim said, this isn't us. This isn't the Union. We were humiliated. And just when you think you're at top, you get humbled like this. And you brought up a point in the group chat, Jillian. You said, now I know how DC United felt when we beat them 6-0, 7-0. And you're right. I mean, this is how DC United feel or felt. And Jim said, our pride gone. And you saw that. But the Union shouldn't have lost this game 6-0. They should not have lost this game 6-0. And we were talking about quitting and everything, and I'll go ahead and bring it up now. And that's what pisses me off, I think, the most, is that the Union quit. The Union quit out there, and that is inexcusable. Why? Why are you quitting? Yes, you're down 2 goals at halftime, and yes, Jose Martinez asked to come out because he was sick, and Jim Curtin didn't go into what was making him sick. Maybe it was the altitude. Who knows? And yes, losing Jose Martinez was terrible for this backline. When you lose a starting caliber 6 like him, you're asking for trouble in your back line. And we saw Alejandro Bedoya play as that lone 6. He looks sluggish. He is not a lone 6. I thought Jesus Bueno didn't have a great night with not tracking runners. And so losing Jose Martinez, I think, yeah, that put a damper in things. But in my opinion, as soon as the Union gave up that second goal, they were done for. Their heads dropped and they just wanted to get out of there. And I don't know what was said. I would love to know what was said at halftime. What was the talk? What was the mood like in the locker room? I think you got a good glimpse of it as soon as the second goal was given. Daniel Gosling, I believe it was. It was either him or Julian
It
Kranza.
was
They picked up
Gazdag.
the ball and slammed it in the center circle. I mean, you can't be doing that.
Mm-mm.
Don't live with your emotions on your sleeve, because once these players see that you're already annoyed, that you're this easily rattled because you're down, oh my gosh, they're gonna have a field day with you. You can't be doing that. And the fans, they're gonna let you have it. They're gonna be in your head the whole game. And Jim said, this isn't us. This is uncharacteristic. And it's not just because of the 6 goals, but you don't I've never seen the Union quit. And last night I did. And I've praised the Union this season, for the team having that belief to still get comeback draws against Chicago, against Sporting Kansas City, against Saprissa. They do have that fight and that belief in them. But for whatever reason, after they went down 2 goals, it was gone. And they kept digging themselves a deeper and deeper and deeper hole. And it got to a point after like the 5th goal, I was like, keep scoring. Just keep scoring. Like, it's a joke. And like, I didn't want to see the Union concede goals, but it's like, clearly they don't care. So if they don't care, why should I care? Like, please continue to humiliate them. And you hope they have a big performance against Austin. Like I said, if I was Jim, I'm not starting any of those players that played against Pachuca. I'm sending a message like that. Like, hey, look, we're going to bring somebody else in here and see if they can do the job better than you, because clearly you couldn't do it on Tuesday night. And maybe somebody else steps up. Maybe somebody shows this coaching staff something different. And you talk about the depth, the lack of depth. Jose Nunez, after the first leg between these two teams, he asked Andre Blake, did the Union do enough to bring in depth this offseason? And this is Andre Blake's response.
I don't wanna get in any trouble, but time will tell. I'll just say time will tell. But yeah, let's see.
Yeah, time will tell. Let's see. And 7 days later, we saw exactly that. We saw exactly that. And it's a joke. It's a joke that nobody seemed up for this match. I think it's pretty telling when a club legend like Andre Blake is, he didn't say much there, but he didn't have to. His little answer that he gave is saying more than 100 words could have said. And you think about all the international competitions. You think about Copa America. You think about the Olympics. You think about international friendlies, Nations League. There's going to be a lot of players missing. And what better time to see, okay, what you have than throwing those players out against Austin? You don't have anything to lose. So why not do it? Thoughts from you guys?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be time to see what these guys have and send a message. As I was telling Kyle, I'm a big Flyers fan. I'm like, John Tortorella would totally bench these players, and he has done that with players this season, after horrible losses. And they've actually shown lots of grit and determination this season. They've been actually like fun to watch. Okay. But yeah, I think maybe it's Makanya time, as I've been saying, and maybe, bring out those young guys here, see what they can do, because we are going to need to have them step up in the absence of some of these players. But yeah, center back situation though, my God, like, I don't know.
It's not good.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point by sharing that Andre Blake clip.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't realize, and while that soundbite says a lot, the body language, and Todd, you were there, Jose was there, the body language said 10 times more. When Jose asked that, he got that look on his face. I could say a lot, but I'm not going to. And he has a smirk on his face. And that tells me, again, it might get me in trouble, that he does not believe that the club has done enough. There's a couple of questions we've asked players that, I don't really want to say and get ourselves in trouble. I mean, time will tell. Let's be honest. But right now, it's like, we got a lot of unproven talent. And then to your point about Jillian, about do we need to? Jim needs to make a statement.
Mhm.
I mean, I know he's a players coach, but you brought up about John Tortorella. Torts would be in that locker room. He would have been piss and vinegar.
He would have ripped them a new one.
In that press conference rather than just ever embarrassed and all that. He would be telling guys like that was not our game, and maybe he did, and but what I'm saying is Jim needs to kind of make a point here that I don't care if you're Mikel Ua or Daniel Gazdag or if you're Nathan Harrell. You got to, from the top of the roster to the bottom, we play with heart. That was not heart. That's not excusable. Now we're going to start players that play hard. Will it hurt us? Yeah, maybe it will. But we're going to find out what we have. Yeah. And if those guys, because Jim always talks about competition. Todd, did you see any competition last night? Because what I saw from that team, I'm having a hard time believing Ty Baribo shouldn't have been in that game. Maybe.
Like, how much worse would Ty have been there?
I mean, now obviously he's not. I mean, what about Jeremy Raffanello?
Yeah.
I mean, there again. I mean, McConaughey. What about him? I mean, there's so much that if we're not going to spend, we need to at least find out what we have, because it's going to be, Portland's going to be an interesting experiment. I don't know what they're going to do with Portland. I mean, with all these people going on break, but we're going to, in this summer, if they do nothing in the second transfer window, is what we thought. Yeah, we're going to be home a lot, and the home crowd, yay. We're going to need stuff, but I don't know. Again, a lot more questions and answers, but last point you brought up about Daniel Gazdag slamming the ball down. I believe it was him. You're right, Todd. Anytime you let the opponent know that you're frustrated, they are going to strike. And what does that message send to the team? Your team? I'm going to make this a little bit more about me than, okay, guys, let's get back on. We're down 2 goals. Let's go score a game. No, we're all just going to hang our heads down. We all know 2-goal leads are the easiest to come back from. You score 2 goals, you win this series. Yeah. All right. You don't. If you don't,
it was not over at that point.
It was not over, but they made that decision to put their heads down. That is a choice, and that is where, if you're Jim, you need to say, guys, you're making a choice to quit now. Now, he might have said that in the locker room. I don't want to speculate.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows what was said? And by the way, it was
exactly. And I'm not going there. It's just there needed to be a drastic shift, and there just wasn't. Is my point. Like, it was like our heads got down after that second goal, and we just gave up because we came out. Yeah, the subs were kind of okay. They were good. Julian came in. It's like, all right, here comes Carranza. Let's see what he can do. Mm-hmm. Nothing. And this is now another big game where Daniel Gazdag has not shown up. I mean, last year, Eastern Conference in Cincy, I called Todd after that game, and the first thing out of my mouth was, what, Todd? Did Daniel even play that game? Remember that? And I said that to him.
I think he needs to put the number 6 back on.
I mean, do something.
Seriously, though.
I mean, just him. Mikel, once again, a big game. And granted, he didn't show up last night. I didn't even realize he was on the pitch half the time. I didn't even see him making runs. I didn't see him doing anything.
Did we see anyone play with fight last night?
No.
I mean, I think the only one that I saw much from was Andre.
And the other thing that got me on Jim's interview, you said after that first goal, playing out the window. Yeah. I know some people on Twitter are reading into that. I mean, you may have planned. He probably could have chose his words better than saying 1 goal, the plane goes out the window. Grant, he was frustrated. But I'm curious what the game plan was because, again, it goes back to Jim needs people there in his ear saying, we need to make this tactical shift now, Jim. And again, maybe there was people in his ear.
Was it to keep a clean sheet and then get a
late
late goal or something?
So are we playing scared? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know, but that was I didn't get to see the PK because I was still like coaching. I was trying to get it on and watch it, but like it makes you think too, like what if they hadn't been, if that soft penalty hadn't been given?
Pachuca was coming after
Pachuca was coming after him anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But man, that was not a good way to start.
They were on back heel from that time that kickoff started. They were on their heels and reminded me a lot of Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a game that the Union were scared in. I mean,
Yeah.
at Subaru Park, too. Like, what are we doing? Like,
well, and
Miami's in your stadium and you're playing scared against them?
Yeah, and I saw some people comment on Twitter that they thought the loss to Miami was worse because we were in our own stadium and we were playing scared and we were playing starstruck with Messi and all that nonsense.
I mean,
which do you think was worse?
Personally, I mean, the Messi was just infuriating because we had all the momentum.
Yeah.
We had actually in that game we were creating chances. I mean, Gazdag had a chance early on in that game. You remember that? And then we were actually trying to fight in that game. We were just playing starstruck. There was none of that. And I think, Todd, to your credit, you bring up about Charlotte. That's probably a better comparison. And again, now we're going out in the round of 16 when we had an opponent. If we could have gotten by there, we could have walked right into a rematch with Club. I still think we probably would beat Hernando, but who knows now after that game.
Yeah, I mean, the Union had the easier side of the bracket, theoretically. There's no reasons why they shouldn't have been in the semifinals. And yeah, you're right. They probably would have played Club America. I think Club America is actually up in that series. I'll have to double check on that. Against Chivas, or they haven't played yet. Sorry.
No,
actually, fine. Yeah, they are up 3-0. So the second leg's tonight. My bad.
But it goes back to the point. Every time the Union in recent years have had an opportunity there to present itself, a favorable opportunity. Last year, it's the Messi game. This year, we get through this bracket. We got to run to semis, probably.
Yeah, imagine if they beat Miami with Messi in town. Like, what that would have done. Like, there was a lot of excitement in the city for that game.
It would have changed.
And the Union lay an egg.
Here's an opportunity to get back to your third Concacaf semifinal in what?
And all 3 times of being in the competition.
Yeah, and that's like 3 out of 4 years. I mean, think about that. That's huge for when you think about international play. This in CONCACAF. I mean, again, they just didn't rise to the occasion.
No, they did not.
Yeah, a couple things. Daniel Gazdag was the player that slammed the ball because Jillian came in the second half. And the transfer window closes for MLS on April 23rd. So theoretically, the Union could still bring players in until April 23rd. Do I see it happening? No. But maybe Jay Sugarman says, oh, well, that was an embarrassment. Let's go and invest more money. And maybe we see the Union make a move. I mean, I seriously doubt it. And I can't remember the last time that I've seen fans that angry calling for Jay Sugarman to sell the team. And I'm not going to tell him, what he should do with his franchise. His franchise is his franchise. But at least try to bring in new investors or something. I don't know. I mean, like, it's insane. You're watching just teams, like you said, Kyle, Colorado, Montreal, who have been in the bottom 5 lowest spending teams in MLS the last couple of years, outspending you. That's disappointing. And fans brought up a really good point. It's like every single season, our season tickets go up. The gear goes up. The food prices in the stadium goes up. The parking goes up. All this stuff's going up. And what do we have to show for it on the field? Nothing. We run the same team back. And from that sense, I do understand the fans' frustration. And yeah, you could say, well, it's because of the Messi tax. Maybe a little bit, but still, it's not stopping teams like Colorado, teams like Montreal spending more than you, New York Red Bulls spending more than you. And I'll be curious to see what the fans' reaction is. March 30th, I believe, is the game against Minnesota. March 30th, does that sound right? Um, but fans, I mean, we're not happy on social media. And again, I'll repeat myself just like I did at the beginning, or like I always say when I bring up fans' reaction on social media. I feel like they're the small minority. It's not a whole dictation of the fan base, but I'd actually say a lot of fans are probably pissed off. I would not be surprised if we hear boos come the 30th. I mean, if this game was played in Subaru Park on Saturday, you would 100% hear boos. I can guarantee that. Um, I'll be curious to hear what Jim Curtin says in his press conference. I'm gonna guess that he doesn't say much on Friday. I'd assume that press conference is. But I mean, there's just no excuses. You're playing at an international stage and you get blown out 6-0. Jose said, it's always 2 steps forwards with this club and then 10 steps back. And yeah, that's true. You have scouts, people all over the world watching this game. These international competitions matter. I think Concacaf Champions Cup's the biggest competition you play in every single year because that leads to the Club World Cup, where you could potentially play against a top team in the Premier League, a top team in La Liga, the Bundesliga. And that's great for your brand exposure, for your team exposure, for the league exposure. And we don't get that. We don't get that with the Union. And I think not only did the Union disappoint themselves, they disappointed MLS as a whole. And people asked Jim Curtin after the game, they said, is the gap closer between these two clubs? What's the gap like between Liga MX and MLS? And Jim says, I can't say that the gap's getting closer because my team just got blown out. And he's right. He's right. But I don't think these teams are that much different between what the scoreline showed us and what this actual team is. It's just one team played with heart, one team didn't. And you're just not used to seeing that with this Union team. And maybe they call a players only meeting. I don't know. I mean, you would hope. I mean, something needs to change. And it's just weird for me. Just seeing this team give up. And I know we talked about this multiple times tonight. But it's like you don't see this ever from this team. You never see it. And you brought up a point actually I want to bring up. Jillian, you talked about the center backs. The center backs have been god awful this season. Jacob Glezis has been horrible. I know this is a audio only podcast, but I'm showing the center back play between Jacob Glezis and Damian Lowe. I mean, the defending by Damian Lowe and Jacob Glezis for the second goal that Rodon scored. You had 2 players on him, Nate Harriel and Jacob Glezis. How you allow Rodon to get the pass off and then to receive the ball back? I mean, that's unacceptable. Damian Lowe is playing so far off his guy. That's inexcusable. Like, what are we doing? So many times during the night, we saw the Union try to play out of the back, and then Pachuca's right there with a counter press, and they turned the Union over. And we talked about this on AAT Sports last night, where that's how the Union were in 2022 with the counter press, they're turning teams over. And for the Union center backs to always be a step behind, for the Union center backs to just give way too much space, it's not good. I mean, so many times last night we see the Union try to play out of the back, and it's just lazy passing, whether it be from Damian Lowe, Jack Elliott, Andre Blake. I don't think had his greatest night, giving up easy goals. I mean, players shouldn't be scoring from 25 yards out. It's inexcusable to not track run. What are we doing? We're giving players too much time and space. And Jim also said that, well, they showed what happens when you give people too much time and space. They're going to take advantage of it. It's simple things. Track your runners. Don't give up. And again, that's why we keep talking about this team quitting. I mean, we saw multiple goals. Julian Kranz shaking his head in disappointment. He can't believe it. Daniel Gosling slamming the ball. Jesus Bueno not tracking his runners. Jacob Glesnes, Damian Lowe not tracking runners, giving their attackers way too much space. Like what are we doing? What are we doing? This isn't the Philadelphia Union that we're used to seeing, and you hope this isn't things to come in the future for this club. But how can you be confident in this team going forward? The sixth goal, again, the Union try to play out of the back, and it's a credit to the press from Pachuca from the first minute all the way to the 90th minute. They are pressing. And yeah, maybe you can make the argument that, well, it's because the season's been going on in Liga MX and MLS is just starting up. Okay, maybe part of that's true. But still, there's no excuse why you're not doing the most basic things. Being able to pass out of the back, the track runners. Tracking runners should just be second nature. And for players, multiple players, not to do that, that's what makes you so upset. And Jim talked about this a couple press conferences ago. He's like, well, a lot of these issues that we've had are correctable. And he's right, it is, but it's not been corrected in 6 games. So what makes you confident that it's going to be corrected going forward? And maybe we're being too negative 6 games into the season, but the performance we've seen from every single player last night, I mean, how can you get excited for that? How? The performances are just inexcusable. And to continue trying to play out of the back, it didn't work the first time. It didn't work the second time. It didn't work the third time. Why are we doing this? I get you're trying to build up possession because Pachuca had majority of the possession last night and the Union couldn't even get on the ball. And so, all right, let's try to build something. But clearly, when you try to build out of the back, it wasn't working. And I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I don't think I am. I don't think I am. We saw a whole bunch of players quit. And where's the excuse? Where can you excuse the not tracking, the mispassing? There's no excuses to be made for that.
I mean, where's Damian Lowe stepping up on that ball on his defender? He's like 5 yards back. It's like, no, when you're showing these clips, it's what I saw last night. There's that one time, I think it was on the last goal. Where's Jack? He should be getting that guy that gets the ball and then passes it back. Like,
watching those is making me so angry. Like, especially that sixth goal. Oh my goodness! But like, they would just give away the ball and just
also Bizo. What was that?
Well,
I mean, I'm trying to be.
I mean, to his credit, I mean, he had 4 guys on him, so there's not much to do.
Yeah.
I know.
No, the one that really got me was, I mean, Damian Lowe has been, he's had such good energy, and he's been, honestly, for the most part, really good, especially in these international competitions. And he laid an egg in this game, and it's just so disappointing because I thought he would step up. I mean, but no, it's just not been good, and we looked lost.
We did.
We looked lost, and we need some kind of response in the next game. The good news is there is a lot of season left. They can turn things around, but they better fix these mistakes quick, okay? Or it's going to be a really long, awful season.
I mean, the 6th goal, I think, is the one that pissed me off the most because Pachuca's just taking the piss, passing it around in the 18-yard box. I mean, nobody's stepping to the ball. It's like, that's how you know that players quit. I know Jacob Glesnes is sliding to try to block it, but when it's only those two, Jack Elliott and Jacob Glesnes back there playing defense, Damian Lowe's pushed too high up the field. I mean, why? Why'd we give up, guys? Why?
Yeah, at the end there, Kyle can tell you, I was like, towards the other game, I'm like, guys, just please score a goal. Like, score a goal.
Shows you have some fight left.
Yeah, like, I get, we're not going to win this thing, but score a goal.
Todd, you brought up a good point earlier today when we were chatting. Um, and I've looked it up. We talked about before the game yesterday the amount of shots and shots on target. And I want to ask you this question because I'm curious what Jim's thought on this is. I mean, through what is it, 2 league games, and I believe
4 Champions Cup
league
games.
we're almost giving up 50% shots on target. Last year, Union gave up right around 30%, which is league average. But the amount of shots, especially in Leagues Cup, what was it, like 30 some? Like it was over almost 52 shots in 4 games. Like it's like almost 13. And then last night they gave up 20. 11 of those were on target. So we're giving up way too many shots. And you brought up earlier about the legs of, what was it, 4,000 minutes last year between Jack? I mean, those legs are looking tired, and we're 6 games into the season already. And I was talking to another guy from Cincinnati Soccer Talk today, and he said the same thing to me. He said this center backs are looking tired. And I think some of it is they also quit. And we were talking, and here, just a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the fitness. So
Yeah, that is funny. I mean, you're right.
what changed? I mean, and this is not me trying to look away. Maybe it was last night. Maybe it was the altitude. Maybe it was a combination of a million things.
Mhm.
We don't know.
Yeah,
But
I mean, you look at 15.5 shots given up in the first 6 games of the season in all competition, 6.1 shots on target. Giving up 15.5 shots per game's not good.
acceptable.
It's
I mean, when you're averaging about 11 shots over the last 3 seasons, it was like 11, 12 shots. I think last year it was 12, but I think 2011, 2021, it was like 11, and then 22 was 11. I was looking earlier today. But still, I mean, that's 3 more shots a game.
That's huge. And okay, yeah,
It
you can make
is.
the argument that okay, a lot of the shots are going off target, but still you're giving up shots. You shouldn't be giving up shots.
No.
And that tells me that you're giving the opposition too much time and space. And that's exactly what we saw against Pachuca during the night. And Stuart Holden said in the post-game wrap-up show on Fox, he said the last 2 years, it seems like this Union team's tired. And finally, somebody nationally brings that up. I've said that the last 2 years, that this team looks tired. And people maybe, or I had one guy today, and I know he's listening to the podcast. Sorry to throw you under the bus. I won't name your name. But he's like, nah, they're not tired. The season just started. They're not tired. Yes, they are tired. They only had
They
a
are tired.
month of an off season. You had Jack Elliott play over 4,000 minutes. Jacob Glesnes play close to 4,000 minutes. Your 2 key center backs playing that many minutes is crazy. And only to have a month off, and then you're wrapping right back up. A Union team that plays a high press system. I use this example all the time. Look at Liverpool. They played a high press system, and after a couple seasons, that midfield was dead. And it's what happens. It's what happens when you play a high risk system where you want to constantly win this ball back. You're going to wear out the players. And again, it goes back to investing into this team. Why wasn't there more done to improve this team? And I know Ernst Tenner can only do what he can do with the amount of money that he has to spend. But even Ernst Tenner hasn't hit a lot of his transfers. I mean, it's been multiple failed windows, and I think it's finally coming back to haunt the Union.
No, I agree. I think that's just it. I mean, what do you think, Kyle?
I mean, I know we've talked about this up in the press box. Ernest gambles low, so when he does hit, it looks impressive. But now I think now the whole in Ernst we trust needs to be debated, because you're right, Todd. Even some of the higher spending ones, and
Is it safe to call Mikel Uhre a bust? Some fans would say that, I think. I think
I
some
think
fans
it
would say that.
would. I mean, I think he's lived down to his expectations so far this season, but he's also had a game-winning goal. He's actually, I think, scored just as many goals as he has the last 2 years at this time in the season. But
I wouldn't call him a bust yet,
but
but
he has
he's
regressed.
underperformed.
He
Yeah.
has. Even though he has. But my concern is Gazdag's underperformed. Outside of one game, Jillian scores that laser of a header and then disappears the rest of the game against Saprissa. I mean, like when you guys got guys like Quinn out there performing at such a high level, and then you're not able to do anything with the ball. I mean, yeah. I mean, Mikel needing to finish chances, not finishing chances now. That's concerning.
Yeah, how much different would this game be if the Union finish one of those 3 chances? I think
Gazdag had that ball run up on him, and I get that, but dude, you can't be then playing around with it. You gotta let go.
I think that changes everything if the Union win that game 1-0. Given the penalty, of course, early in this game deflates the whole mood. And I've talked about this so many times already this season. I've talked about it in the past. Conceding goals in the first half. 7 goals now the Union have conceded in the first half. They've only scored 3 goals in the second half. They've also conceded 7, scoring 7 goals. It's going to create any chances whatsoever last night against Pachuca. But to be trailing at halftime all the time. Jim Curtin says it all the time that this team isn't built to play from behind. And yes, I know I talked about us getting that come from behind draw against Chicago, against Sporting Kansas City, against Saprissa. But when you play better teams and you're playing from behind, like they were against Pachuca, the Union are going to struggle to come back. And especially a team that plays so similar to the Union with a counter-press system. I mean, it's hard to find positives. And I mean, people listening to this podcast know that I always try to look for positives in a game. And there is none. There's none. I don't think that you need any positives from this game. Don't make excuses. The Union were crap. They gave up. And you just hope that it doesn't happen anymore going forward. But time will tell, like Andre Blake said, if the Union did enough. Will that be this Saturday against Austin? I don't know. I really have no more thoughts on this game. If you guys have anything else you want to chime in with, give your thoughts on, go for it. But I don't know. It's so deflating.
It is deflating. And hopefully it served as a wake-up call and they turn this thing around. We'll see.
I mean, I said it last night across the pitch that, I want to see the Union come out with a spark, with a fire, with that killer mentality on Saturday. I still think Jim needs to sit some people. But
what if the Union win 3-4-0 against Austin? Does it change your mind?
It tempers. It doesn't change my mind, but it makes me more like, okay, that was a one-off. That was not necessarily a fluke.
I need to see a few games in a row where we actually look good,
But like I said last night, if they go out into Austin and they get beat 3-1, 2-0, now we got cause for concern. And I know, Todd, you and Jose were both like, we can argue that the cause for concern is now. And that's a very fair point. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there listening right now. It's like, oh man, I've been cause for concern since the first game of the year. That's a fair point. I'm not going to say that. I think for me, it's just, Jim always says 10 games. Well, Jim, we might have to knock that. It is a good point. But Jim, there's been a lot of things that were happening last year that are happening already in its first 6 games. And you're saying they're correctable. How are we correcting them? Because I'm not seeing any correction. But that's just my take. Is it gloom and doom? Is the sky falling? No, it's only 6 games. That's a positive. But there is a lot more questions that we just don't know right now. And I think for some fans, that's very concerning. I will give a former guest, Tim Furlong, a shout out. I don't know if anybody saw his tweet. He tweeted out yesterday. He's like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on here? I've never seen fans like this." And I'm like, I wanted to, and I didn't do it. I wanted to send him the GIF of Bruce Willis, like, "Welcome to the party, pal." But Tim, if you're listening, I know you are. No, it's again, like Todd said, sometimes social media doesn't fit everybody's in the fan base's true feelings, but it's definitely going to be interesting on Saturday night, and I think they need a win. They definitely need some positive, especially with Portland being down.
Mhm.
So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, and well, and as you guys are, neither of you are 5 for 5 Philadelphia fans. All I can say is, welcome to being a Philadelphia fan.
I mean, Todd's an Orioles fan.
Oh yeah, he understands pain.
I mean, my gosh, I'm a Timberwolves fan.
Now, of course, the Orioles are looking pretty
I'm a
darn good.
Timberwolves fan. The worst
But-
sports franchise of all 4 franchises.
Mhm.
So I think we've all lived through pain.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
misery loves company.
Yeah.
Here's a stat, because we
All
know we love stats on this podcast.
We do.
This is from Jonathan Yardley. MLS teams are 5, 58, and 14 in competitive games against Mexican opposition. MLS teams are 13 and 49 in 2-leg series versus Mexican opposition. MLS teams 5 and 31 won the second leg of those series in Mexico. And so it was always going to be a tough ask for the Union down in Mexico. Kyle brings up a semi-positive. It's only 6 games in the season. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, a lot of mistakes early on. The mistakes aren't getting corrected. They can get corrected. But in my opinion, this is my opinion, if the Union, whatever happens this Saturday, isn't going to change my opinion of this team. I'm still going to be panicking. Give me until week 15, 16 to change my opinion if the Union are back or not. I mean, I just think you run the same team back over and over and over again. And Kevin Kincaid, I think, had an article about this, right? Where he said, why should fans be happy with running it back or something like that? You guys, I think, would know better than me. But, I mean, he's right. Like, why should fans be happy when it didn't work the last couple seasons? And 6 games in, it's it's not working out. And we continue to talk about teams in MLS getting better. We see the quality in Liga MX much better. And yeah, people are going to say, well, look what happened in Leagues Cup. You had 2 MLS clubs in the final. Okay, yeah, that's true. But look at all the traveling that the Mexican teams had to do. Imagine if these games were played in Mexico. It would be exactly like we've seen over the years in Concacaf Champions Cup League. Whatever you want to call it. I guess Cup is the official name now. But yeah, deflating nonetheless. And we'll see what this team has left Saturday night against Austin FC. But Jillian, Kyle, thanks so much for making time coming onto the podcast. Sorry, Jose, we missed you another time.
Yeah.
But where can people find you guys on social media?
So we're on Twitter at TOTWAG. You can find me at silly_Jilly on Twitter. And Kyle, you are at
Coach Almoney on Twitter, and I will be having an article coming out here in the next day or two.
We're also on Instagram and Facebook at The One Team We Agree On, and our website, theoneteamweagreeon.com.
And for those traveling to Austin this weekend, have a fun time, and hopefully the Union show up this time.
Man, that's my biggest fear, going to Nashville, and especially because my friend Jem's coming from London.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, if the Union lay an egg, he's never going to watch MLS. He's not going to think the Union are a good team. Like, please, if you guys are going to show up for any game, please show up for the Nashville game. Do not lay an egg, because I do not want a guy that lives in England his whole life to continue to have this perception that MLS is a joke league. Because when he went to Nashville last year, he saw Nashville versus Portland, I think it was, and he was like, yeah, this is the equivalent to the league below the championship, League One. And I'm like, oh God, like, I don't think so, but Nashville doesn't play the most attractive soccer, so I can see why you said that. So please, Union, do not lay an egg in Nashville in a couple of weeks. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod. The website, thefreekick.substack.com. Should have an article out here, just like Kyle said, in the next couple of days. The YouTube channel for Goals Breakdown, youtube.com/freekickpod. Where we get your podcast of The Free Kick. And be sure you guys follow Kyle and Jillian on social media, the podcast, listen to the podcast. They do fantastic work. It's always a blast having these guys on the show and just talking Union soccer. And I know they've been on the podcast a lot. You guys actually might be the most appeared guests on the podcast. So congrats. I have to go and look at that. Kyle, I'm sure you'll look at some point and be like, yep, we are. We've been on the podcast more than anybody else. So I would not be surprised by that. But yeah, thanks again, you guys. Thank you guys for listening to the show. And there was no way that I wasn't going to not do a podcast with a reaction for this game because we had so many podcasts last year or in 2022 when the Union are just blowing out teams for fun. And well, this is so fun. And now the Union finally get to be the recipient of getting blown out. So of course you gotta give a podcast and give a reaction. And yeah, I'm sure this was super Negadelphia for a lot of you guys, but when you get blown out 6-0, which doesn't happen, first time ever in team history, how can you stay positive? But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.